I will tell you that it was nothing short of very violent. I will tell you that.
A teenage boy allegedly killed another teen, luring her to a nature trail late at night and stabbing her to death. It sounds a lot like the plot line to the Netflix show Adolescence, but it also happened in real life, according to police in Hernando County, Florida. We've got the latest details on this grim case. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. So someone simply taking advantage of the trail at Cypress Lakes Preserve came upon a grim discovery back on March 27th.
We received a call from an individual just up the trail here behind me, just a tiny bit, that he had found what he believed to be a young female deceased.
You heard that right. Hernando County deputies, they rushed out to the scene. They quickly made the decision that they needed to bring in homicide detectives. And around 36 hours later, Sheriff Al Neheis gave reporters an update on what happened.
We quickly found out through one witness that this young lady apparently left her home in the middle of the night. And again, this is a juvenile. Left her home at about 1:30 in the morning. So we were relatively confident almost immediately that there was, she went to go meet an individual who was likely the person who killed her. As late as this morning, we were doing good old-fashioned police work, talking to a bunch of people, issuing a lot of search warrants as well as preservation orders on electronic media type and electronic social media accounts and so forth. And we happened to get fortunate that a lead was developed of a particular individual who may have had contact with her, and we'd already talked with this individual. And to give you some perspective, over about a 24-hour period or a little bit longer, we did close to 24 formal interviews, as well as talked to dozens of other people informally, knocking on doors and so forth. We probably had about a dozen different documents that we had to do, like, as I said, search warrants and preservation orders. So detectives worked very late into last night, as well as getting up very early this morning and continued working. One of the things that we did, one of those kind of informal interviews, led us to believe that a person might have been in the area who originally told us that he was not in the area. And of course, that caused us to focus in on that particular individual. I'm happy to report that a few hours ago, about 2 or 3 hours ago, after interviewing this individual and talking with the state attorney's office, we were able to develop enough information where the state attorney was comfortable in charging a Mr. Cameron Cubel, C-U-B-E-L. He's a 16-year-old white male, and he was charged, or is in the process of being charged, with first-degree murder. Again, that's in consultation with our local state attorney's office. We get them involved almost immediately when we have some situation like this to make sure that they are comfortable with the case. The only history, somewhat significant for this particular individual, is a battery arrest last year. Other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot of history. We could tell pretty quickly that there was a lot of passion and a lot of violence involved in the particular death. So we were relatively confident it was not a random act. And as I said, because she did sneak out in the middle of the night to meet with some individuals, one or more individuals, we were confident that she likely knew her killer. And this individual and our victim do have known each other in the past.
And who is Mr. Cubel accused of killing? Well, family members soon publicly identified the victim as 16-year-old Abbriella Elliott. And while the sheriff didn't indicate what kind of connection Abbriella had with Cubel, her loved ones say he's an old ex-boyfriend. Now, the sheriff said they had spoken with Cubel in an informal interview, asking him questions about Abbriella and what he might know, but when they learned he wasn't being truthful with them, they brought him in for a formal interview. And according to the sheriff, Abbriella hadn't even been reported missing yet when she was found. She left home overnight. The bloody crime scene was discovered just about 8 hours later, and it's possible no one even knew she was gone. Hey, I just want to take a quick sidebar from Sidebar to thank our sponsor, Odoo, for helping make this episode happen. Now, here's the thing. Odoo is an incredible all-in-one business management software, and it provides you with a range of applications like their Projects app. We know managing projects can be tough, but with Odoo Projects app, it really doesn't have to be. You need a clear timeline? The Gantt view maps out your tasks, helps you stay on track. Prefer a more flexible approach? The Kanban view lets you move tasks easily from to-do to done. Or if you like structure, the list view gives you all the details at a glance. Plus, Odoo's comprehensive dashboard keeps you updated on task status, activities, remaining time, so you're always in control. And with powerful reporting tools, you can track your project's budget, milestones, and profitability in real time. Odoo Projects app helps you stay organized, meet deadlines, and boost productivity. So right now you can get a free 15-day trial of Odoo's all-in-one business solution. Scan the QR code on screen or check it out at our link, odoo.com/sidebarproject. Now, an exact motive for the crime, or this alleged crime, has not been revealed yet. And all the sheriff would say about the murder weapon was that it was, quote, an edged weapon, and that the attack had been very violent. I want to talk more about this. I want to bring on victims' rights lawyer John Phillips. John, it's good to see you. I mean, we have been covering, unfortunately, a lot of these cases of teen-on-teen violence. What is your take on this, assuming these allegations are true? Such a young alleged perpetrator and such a young victim here.
I approach these cases not only as a victims' rights lawyer, but as the father of a 13-year-old, 10-year-old, and 7-year-old boy. And so I'm kind of headed into that chapter where they start to get girl crazy and girl crazy like I knew and you knew is a little bit different now because of all of the hate, all of the social media access. We're just inundated with violent case after violent case. And this one's truly, truly disheartening, because you had a girl who probably just wanted a little bit of time with her on again, off again, or whatever their situation was, and it winds up in murder.
Let me ask you a question. Why are investigators not revealing a lot of details at this point, and what do you want to know as this case progresses? I mean, they just even say an edged weapon. Why won't they indicate what it is unless they maybe don't know?
I mean, they probably don't know. They're probably just going off of the what we would expect to be stab wounds or cutting wounds, because that's the edge, right? I did find it interesting that the sheriff put up the mugshot of the 16-year-old alleged killer, but yet kind of safe harbored some of the facts. We use mugshots. They were going to release it anyway, so why not have the prop there, I guess? But we're still within days of this incident or weeks of this incident, and I think they're still trying to get their arms around the facts, and sometimes you don't want to release it because you have defense attorneys looking at the media releases too. And
that also includes the motive, right? Now, we both know motive is not an element to a murder charge. Prosecutors don't have to prove it, but it does help tell a story for a jury later on. They're being quite, maybe they don't know what it is yet, maybe they have to explore it. And I'm curious when you think about what that could be, because they also talked about an informal interview with him and a formal interview with him. What do they mean by that? And what do you think, why do you think we don't know what this potential motive might be at this point, or why it hasn't been released?
Yeah, I would hope the formality versus the informality isn't over that little thing called, Miranda rights.
I was thinking the same thing.
I would assume that they were both Mirandized, but sometimes you can bring somebody in as a witness and not Mirandize them. You can't use that statement. And then sometimes, in Florida, informal versus formal is whether it's recorded. It just kind of depends. It's going to progress. Look, I have a similar case in Jacksonville where an 18-year-old high school student stabbed his 16-year-old, 17-year-old ex-girlfriend like 13 or 16 times, resulting in paralysis. And it was this Romeo Juliet parody of romantic murder and then suicide. And neither occurred. They both lived. And so we are seeing more of it. And it's highly disturbing when, as good parents, we're depending upon other people to be good parents. And the world around them, the chaos around them is what's parenting them, which is why you kind of referenced the show Adolescence. And
Can I talk about that? Because when the news broke of Abbriella's killing and this news started to spread, and you see articles about it, people were almost immediately making connections between this case and this Netflix show, Adolescence. And it's this fictional drama, follows a family in the UK whose teenage son is accused of meeting a girl in a secluded part of the neighborhood and stabbing her to death. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that this was a motivation or this was an inspiration, but when you're seeing something like this, you do have to make that connection. And isn't it weird? And I'll tell you, it's also very similar to the Aiden Fucci case, right? A case that we've covered here on Sidebar. We've covered it here on Law and Crime. For anybody who doesn't know, this was out in Florida as well. Fucci was 14 years old, stabbed to death 13-year-old classmate Tristan Bailey more than 100 times, this back in 2021. By the way, Tristan was seen on camera walking with Fucci toward a wooded area, very similar to what the allegations are here. Then he walks back alone. Tristan, again, was found with dozens of stab wounds. Fucci was charged as an adult, changed his plea to guilty, was sentenced to life in prison. So when you see the connection between the Fucci case and now you see this connection to this Netflix show, again, I don't know. We can't say at this point that there was a motivation, assuming these allegations are true, but it is eerie, John.
It is. And it's just art and reality are kind of mixing themselves in our society quite a bit. And Florida in particular has been, Aiden and Mr. Pearson, who stabbed Madison. Like we're seeing these over and over again. And I don't think it's enough to say, look, the kid or this group might have been motivated by a Netflix show, but it is eerily similar. And it takes a lot of different areas to kind of radicalize or take an immature child's brain and give them enough fodder to think this is the way out, that murder is the way out of whether it's a failed relationship or friendship or what. But it's important to note here that they're looking to charge first-degree murder, right, which would assume some level of premeditation, that they've found some level of social media messaging, right, whatever, that contemplated this killing ahead of time.
Two things I want to address about that. I want to talk about the first-degree murder charge, whether or not we're dealing with a situation where we'll be tried as an adult. Let's put that to the side for a second. The one thing I could say is if we are going to agree with the assumption that maybe there is this prevalence of teen-on-teen violence, and look, that's happened for a long time, but just one difference when I look at something in the Fucci case, in this case, the allegations here, social media. One of the messages, at least I think that came across in the Netflix show, is that there is a lot of messaging online that could be harmful. There's social media messaging, there's bullying, there's misogynistic rhetoric. And again, we are making assumptions about this case before we even know anything. Generally speaking, do you think the prevalence of social media, the access to it, the messages you see on there, the themes on there, could potentially contribute to what we're seeing?
Absolutely. So, and it's not just the social media that your viewers are kind of on, the tip of the iceberg of X or Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. But a lot of teens these days are getting into the more radicalizing and extreme social medias, the 4chans, the 8chans, there's Soyak, there's all sorts of absolute, Jesse, hate-filled social media that we even saw 18-year-old, 21-year-old shooter shot up a Dollar General trying to accomplish TND, total inward destruction or death, because that's the bubble that he grew up in, no parenting or lack of parenting and all this hate. And again, here we have it again where, I think we're going to find this young man, Mr. Cubel, was surrounded by a lack of, moral guidance and compass. And here the world is ready to hate each other at any instance, whether it's the tip of the iceberg or the deep iceberg. It's really poison.
And look, he is, innocent until proven guilty. And we'll see what the evidence is. But assuming they move forward with this, and I haven't seen it, maybe you've seen it, I don't know if they're going to charge him as an adult, but if they do, talk to us what the complications could be, because his defense attorney, the first thing would try to get this into juvenile court, where the punishment is very different than it would be in adult court. Talk to us about what we should be thinking there.
Yeah, the mere fact they're already talking in terms of first-degree murder, there is no first-degree murder. Oh, but we're going to keep it in juvenile court. First degree murder is in adult court. They're looking at making sure that he's tried as an adult, and the defense team, whether privately held or in likely cases like this, public defenders, are going to use every club in their golf bag related to his young age of 16. The male brain doesn't develop until 23 to 26. The immaturity, the fact that he just, was a spurn love, and the fact that this happened to two 16-year-olds, which again, it was pre-guidance, pre-ability to think think like an adult. And they're going to make those arguments, but I suspect the fact they're showing his mugshot, talking about blades and talking about first-degree murder, and it won't publicly be released, but, within those circles, you're going to see a very gruesome, hate-filled, and they've talked about it, passion-filled stabbing that this was, and premeditation, that this was, just something horrible.
So does that mean when you hear that, a defense attorney's ears will perk up and say, wait a minute. Maybe this wasn't murder. Maybe this was heat of passion, right? This was manslaughter. This was in the moment.
Yeah, that's right. You're going to hit every club you can hit. But on the same token, they kind of pre-bragged about the investigation they did and the subpoenas they got responded to quickly. And they're talking already about first-degree murder. So I think they're going to try to build the puzzle around premeditation.
Can I ask you a real quick question? So Cubel's criminal history, aside from this arrest for some sort of assault, because this all would have happened when he was a juvenile, my understanding, the public can't access those juvenile records, but assuming he has some sort of criminal history, would that affect him whether or not this is in a juvenile court or in an adult court in terms of, a potential sentence?
Yeah, working backwards, it depends on the resolution, but working backwards, it definitely could come into sentencing. The fact that he has a prior battery, it just depends. Even though you want a short question, there's an interesting thing about Florida law that's specific to Florida, and that Florida provides that minors and people of unsound mind are not supposed to have access to weapons bigger than a pocket knife, including guns. And so one of my questions is the civil litigation side, the victim side, is where did he get whatever caused all these edged wounds? Because, minors aren't allowed to have it in Florida. And again, then you kind of look back to his prior behavior and what his tools of the trade were.
One more thing I want to get to before we finish this is going back to the victim in this case. I want to go back to Abbriella. So she had just celebrated her 16th birthday 2 weeks before she died. And as part of a GoFundMe campaign for funeral expenses, Abriella's mother wrote that she was always smiling, singing, acting goofy. She had so much life ahead of her. I think that is the key there. When you look at these cases and you look at how young these victims are, it is just so heartbreaking. And John, as somebody who is a victim's rights lawyer, I just wanted to finish up with, what do you say to the family who lost a loved one to a violent crime like this, where it's hard to make sense of why something like this happened?
Ever since Jordan Davis was shot and killed over loud music in 2012, I've been in those living rooms of parents who have lost children. And there's literally no word in the English language for the parent that loses a child too soon. We're not supposed to bury our children. And to the Elliott family, justice is spelled one way, but it's defined many different ways. And certainly the criminal conviction, the criminal court process is one, but, families tend to want, civil justice. And there's limitations to that where you have destitute civil defendants. And then there's change from this. And I really think across the country, legislators need to wake up and protect our youth who are stabbing and killing and harming our other youth. We've got to address it. And more hate and more spewing of toxicity isn't it.
It's a horrifying reality. It really, really is. And it's difficult to report these cases. It's difficult to think about what the family's going through. But John, appreciate the work that you do and helping these victims move forward after such a terrible, terrible case and tragedy. John Phillips, thanks so much for taking the time. It was good seeing you.
Thank you, Jesse.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.